Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Corona Chronicles Live. And this is really my last episode of 2020. So I'm kind of excited about that. I didn't think about it till I just started doing this intro. But I'm excited about my next guest, Marissa. We actually got connected through Instagram. And we also have a mutual contact, Megan Barnhard, who had a mind to introduce us, but we had already done that ourselves. So I'm really excited about this episode. We are able to catch up. I love her little plaque that she has behind her. Peace begins with me. That has just been a lifesaver for me doing remote learning with 8 children. So before we get into our conversation, I want to give Marissa the floor to introduce herself to everybody.
Oh, thanks. I actually thought of you, Michelle, when I put that up here. I was like, where am I going to have for 2021? Where am I going to put my desk? That's
Yeah.
okay. So I'm Marisa, and I am a parenting coach and family-centered yoga teacher. I live here in France, but I'm American. So when we met, actually, it was so fascinating because, yeah, it's like I don't have as many children, but I've had to figure out how to navigate raising children on the expat planet, which sometimes feels like I have more children than I do because they're speaking different languages and personalities are different. And so I work with families who are just feeling like they are disconnected and life feels heavy and they're tired and kids are misbehaving and they know that they want to be mindful, and they practice mindfulness often, but they're not sure how to take it off the mat and live it every day. So I'm all about finding the fun and figuring out how you can make those little tweaks so that if the internet's not working, you can figure out a solution. And you don't go into a hole and cry.
Yes, so true. And I love the fact that you say a parenting coach because so often many of us, which I've fallen into this myself as a parent, thinking, oh, I'm supposed to know what I'm supposed to do. You don't have that on your radar to think that you need a coach or there is a coach that's out there that can help you with some of your issues when it comes to parenting. So
Yeah.
how did you end up into this platform in the very beginning?
So it's so funny. I've actually only recently started calling myself a parenting coach. So my background is in genetic counseling. And I used to work in pediatric genetics in France before we moved here, in the US before we moved here to France. And I always had this story, even we've lived here for 11 years, but I always had the story that I needed to be a working mom, right? And that like, oh, I had to give up my career and find different things. And I sort of fell into teaching yoga here. And I fell into being an English teacher and sort of doing these things. And in large part because of COVID and having to be around I think I'm a pretty good mom. You and I talked last time about, sort of similar paths of after my second son was born, I ended up pushing myself too hard and burning out. Probably had postpartum depression, if not anxiety, after my first child, but pushed it down, did the things that needed to get done. But with my second son, because we were here already in France and so far away from help and family, I took on more than I could chew, and I ended up getting really, really sick. And so yoga was a part of my healing process. And it was doing yoga and not finding myself showing up on the mat regularly because I was trying to do yoga the right way, the adult way. And then one day I was like, this is ridiculous. And I put on a yoga video for my son while I did a yoga video for myself. And I was like, he's having so much more fun. I'm going to go do their yoga. And I loved it. And we connected more. And I was like, why am I not doing this? Why am I not having fun? So that switch for me was really the first time where I realized that story started to shift of the working mom having to be out of the house and having to be something where I was checking these academic boxes, and that I could kind of create my own story and my own reality. And it took me many, many years because that was 8 years ago. But then because of COVID, when I was home with my kids, all of the things that were working before weren't working because I was around them 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really good communication before. We had fun together. We played together. But when it was like, oh, now I have to like help you with your distance learning. Now I have to kind of control your routine. And I'm not very good controlling my own routine. So, and then my husband on top of it, I really struggled again and started finding myself in that same spiral of like, wait, I thought I was good at this and I'm not good at it. What's going wrong? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need to find better parenting skills. Also, my kids are different ages than they were when I started thinking all these things. So I went and looked for a parenting coach. And I found Positive Discipline, which really helped me kind of have a different language that I could use with my children. Mm-hmm. It also helped me to start doing the mindset work on myself. Because like you and I have talked about before, like you can be the best mom in the world, but if you're not nurturing yourself, right, like it's not going to work. It's not going to last. Yeah. And so it was in kind of finding that parenting coach and saying like, hey, wait a minute, like this is actually what I do. Like I work with moms, I work with kids, I help them find solutions to create more fun and ease and joy. Mm-hmm. Why am I not calling myself a parenting coach? And why like I use so much of my genetic counseling background as well, because it's all about finding your uniqueness. And I was just having a conversation with a friend earlier and she was like, oh, well, I'm supposed to do this. And I was like, no. Like, you're not supposed to do anything because you're not like, your kid is not the average kid in that book. Your kid is your kid and you're not the average parent that book is written for. You are you. So let's figure out what you want to do. Like the supposeds are easy, mm-hmm. but they don't always work. Then what?
Right.
And he's like, you are a parenting coach. I'm like, I know. So I think it's when you recognize that as a parent, you are constantly adapting, you are constantly learning new tools and finding and experimenting and finding what works for you and your family. Mm-hmm. That it's like, of course I need a coach because what worked yesterday isn't going to work tomorrow. And that doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. It just means that I have to find like another tool for my toolbox.
Right.
And so you need somebody to remind you, to encourage you, to empower you, to practice what you preach when you're talking to your girlfriends and you're like, you're an amazing mom. What are you talking about? So yeah.
I love that. That is so good because, we always have these cliches that we say, parenting doesn't come with a manual or, moms, they just put themselves last, right? And so we've kind of like adopted this mindset. And when it comes to actually being proactive, we just don't know where to begin. So I think that's really good that you even brought up. Sometimes we're so busy doing things that we don't really analyze. Wow, I am already doing this, because we're thinking certain things, like for, just thinking of yourself as a coach, you're thinking, oh, I'm doing this. And because it's not what you attribute that definition looking like for whatever reason, that happened with me with depression. It was like, oh, okay, you know what? I know what depression is. It's somebody who stays in the bed all day and, they're not motivated. So that's not me. I'm definitely not that. Not knowing that it looks different for different people,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it's funny, like, I think that's where the Peace Begins With Me comes in for so often for me. So, right, like I shared with you last time, when I do it, I tap on my fingers
Mm-hmm.
so that I don't have to say it out loud. I'm in a place where I can't say it out loud, but it's like peace begins with me.
Mm-hmm.
And giving myself in my business, but also as a parent, like that opportunity to take that deep breath and to say peace begins with me. It's like, okay, how can I look at this a different way? How can I shift from that sort of like, oh, I'm the victim and I'm doing everything wrong and I need a savior to come and rescue me from my children or, you know, to like, oh yeah, like I get to be, and this is why I love like you calling yourself SuperMom, like I get to be my own superhero. Like I get to be a superhero for myself. I get to save myself. And in doing so, I'm role modeling for my children. And I'm showing up in this place of more empowerment, where I can be proactive, or the word I like to use is, because the opposite, we think of the opposite of proactive as being reactive. But I often think like, yeah, when you're having a conversation with your children and they're in crisis mode or in chaos mode, because that's just their normal state, right? Like, I don't want to do my chores. You can be reactive or you can be responsive. So I almost feel like sometimes you can't be proactive and like sort of plan ahead for like what's the chaos that's going to come down the stairs. Or,
Exactly.
But knowing you have that toolbox proactively, you're like, oh, okay, instead of just being defensive or instead of reacting to the situation, how can I respond to the situation? And peace begins with me helping with that. It was like, oh, right, okay, let me calm down, think about my toolbox, and then respond from this place of empowerment instead of you're yelling and screaming and driving me crazy and you're pushing on my buttons and now I'm the victim and I just want to go run and hide, or send you to your room and ground you for life. Right?
I love that because, that just kind of gave me the image of, somebody who was playing tennis, for example. They serve you the ball, but you can take authority with your reaction as to how the game can transition from there. Or even like a transition, when somebody gives something to you, that pause, that moment can totally redirect the energy and everything, So sometimes we hold space for things so that we can process, okay, you know what? This is really like not a good feeling that I'm being dished on. And how do I want to convert this to something else? You know what I'm saying?
And I love that because, and you call this the Corona Chronicles, like I often have sat here over the last 10 months thinking like, if this had been like the flu, or if this had been like, we went into lockdown for 3 months and then like, it was like over, how would it be different? Right? Like I often have these conversations often when I'm lying in bed and can't sleep, like, how would it be different if? and I really do think that like, again, I'm not saying that I would wish this on anyone, and
right.
But the fact that this has gone on for so long means that reaction that we had at the beginning, which was very defensive and very like from that place of scarcity and lack and fear. If when we live there, we don't make the best decisions.
Right.
And so if this had passed while we were still all collectively in fear and reacting from that place, we would not be making the changes that I think a lot of us are making. And so this sort of silver lining, if you will, or like the sort of heading into 2021 and with like the vaccines now and sort of this more of a thinking about like, okay, maybe things are going to become normal and we can go back to where we were before. We're all different and we know that. And I think many people are starting to see, they got to that place where it's like, okay, what do I control? I don't have control over this virus. I don't have control over the decisions that our governments and are making about where we go and how we go there and whether our kids are in school and not. What can I control? And when you're going through burnout, or imagine like with your depression too, you get to that point where you're like, okay, like, and you and I talked about this last time too. It's like, there are so many things I can't control, and kids are number one. Like, I cannot control my children, but I can respond and I can like navigate and guide when I show up, not from that place of fear and lack and victimhood, but from that place of, there are things that I can control.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I even think, just like you said, what if it only lasted 3 months? I mean, my business wouldn't be where it is. The connections that I have wouldn't be where they are, because, it is this element of genuinely connecting with people that are like-minded. I don't know. There's that ability to be able to see some of those traits in people when they do video. Because what caused me to reach out to you was the video you had done about being fearful about your kids going back to school or something. I can't quite remember the whole gist of it, but it is that ability for those emotions to be felt, and, just to be without a lot of fluff with it. We have been so conditioned to hide behind our emotions, so to speak. Well, I'm a mom, but when I'm at work, I can't really show that I'm a mom. I'm going in the bathroom and saying, hey, you guys get it together. I have a meeting. Don't call me anymore. You know what I mean? But something about being able to be in this digital platform allows you to be able to be who you are with life happening at the same time, if that makes sense.
I so love that. And I think you're right. Like, when I look back on this year, from that place of where the silver linings, right? Because they're absolutely not silver linings, but from that place of what are the silver linings? Had we sort of gone back to normal quicker, I genuinely think that we wouldn't have been given that time to take the breath, right? And to see our kids and connect. And I think when all is said and done, and we're 20, 30, 40 years out looking back, and like you said, I mean, because I know your kids are older, and there's some of your kids are younger, but their kids who are older, who are starting their own life, and getting married and thinking about their futures. When we look back at this time, we were able to do all the things that we were complaining about before. Like, before it was like, oh, I never have enough time with my kids, or there's 15 stores to go to. It was like we were so overwhelmed by all of the choices and all of the things on our to-do list. And we kept saying, like, oh, I can't wait to slow down. Like, I want to slow down. I can't wait till I retire to slow down. Right? And it's like, COVID, like, you have to slow down and talk to your children and figure out, like, what are your values, and how do you want to communicate, and what kind of relationship do you want to have? And they're not easy questions, right? They're questions that we spend a lot of time distracting ourselves from, because it hurts to ask, what's wrong with my life, and why do I want it to be different, and how do I make it different? It's easy to complain and say, I want it to be different. And COVID really was this chance to be like, what values do I have, and how do I want what message do I want to put out there? And I think that's why we ended up connecting with people who are like-minded. We started listening more because we had time.
This is true.
We were doing 15. We weren't spending 45 minutes in our cars commuting from one thing to another, right? It was like we just went from one Zoom call to another. So it was like, oh, like we're really listening more.
Yeah, I that is so true, and I love that point because just that element of things slowing down to a standstill and having those hard conversations. I mean, I feel like I have had 5 or 7 years in 1 year in terms of insight and wisdom and learning and communication has really been a big one because we've got the Black Lives Matter, then you've got the political climate and all these different things that before people would say, oh well, I'm not going to talk about it, but now that we've been forced to, every platform is saying the same thing, you can't escape what's on the news about Black Lives Matter because it's on social media,
Right.
It's on Instagram, it's on all these different places. So nobody really can hide from some of the real issues, which has forced a lot of people to have those conversations that really, I mean, if we all get down to it, it relieves a lot of burden because it's just the misconception about what does this mean? How is this person feeling? I'm so much about asking people, why am I going to assume, try to talk for them, figure it out? Why can't you just ask them? And people want to be heard. So, it really has been a great thing to be able to shed light on some of these issues, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, I do truly believe that because we were home, things, and had sort of slowed down, things that had sort of been normalized before. So like police violence against Black people, like how many deaths did we sit through where people got outraged and rioted and then we just moved on? And because we were home, and so making that choice of going out and protesting or having the difficult conversations, again, like we had time. We could not distract ourselves. The distraction was our family and
right.
Because where do we normally distract ourselves? Twitter and Facebook, but that's where those conversations were happening. And so I really do think that these sort of the normal that we had been complaining about for so long, or that like we were being desensitized to, this gave us a wake-up call. And here in France, I think I think I shared this with you last time, I can't remember, but we've lived here for 11 years, which was not part of the plan, right? But when we moved here, you just get into this routine. And so like holidays would come and go, and I would like, it's like, oh, we should call our parents. We should we'll talk to them on a birthday, or we'll talk to them on a holiday. But during, same thing with like girlfriends, like during COVID, it was like, we're all home. We have no excuse. And so like we did Passover was the first holiday for us that came after COVID. And we were all during lockdown. There's a 6-hour time difference between us. Like, it was like, oh yeah, we can have dinner. My parents can have lunch, and we can actually like celebrate this holiday together.
Wow. Yeah.
And we had a 2-hour Zoom call where we celebrated Passover, which we had never done in 11 years of living here. And then like, my college roommates, we were like, hey, like, how about we get together every couple of weeks and have a Zoom chat? And, and we figured out time difference. So it's like Saturday evening for me and afternoon for them. So we all kind of figured out ways to truly connect. And that's what we all said we were missing, right? We were missing that connection. and to your point of like, we all want to belong, we all want to be heard, we all want to be listened to. Like, we weren't listening because we didn't have time. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, you're doing what? And you, like, this friend I talked to today, we hadn't talked in maybe 4 or 5 months. We talked in the summer, then life happens. She has a new job. And I was like, what do you mean? How did I miss that? It's COVID. I shouldn't have missed that. Like, right. So it's almost like we're starting to go back into that normal routine of like not being in touch every 2 weeks. It's like, oh my God, I missed you, got a new job. Like,
Right. That is true. That is true. I love that. And I think, that's the thing that kind of makes it exciting and like your own evolution. It's like a lot of people, um, you have your own platform. We all do. So you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to get on here, do a post, but a video can turn into a platform. People begin to react to that. You have conversations and you're evolving, you're speaking up more. And it's like you hadn't even anticipated this. So these things really can happen organically, which takes us down another journey of realizing that, you have a voice and people value what you're saying. And, it just continues to grow from there. So,
and I'm not a snowflake, right? Like, I think we all had this, like, oh, I'm alone in the world, or like nobody else is going through this. And one of the things about connecting with parents online, right, is that you're like, oh, you too, right? Like, and like, we all needed that. We were all so much in this like space of juggling and trying to do all the things and be the super mom without having those difficult conversations about how do I prioritize, or looking at people's Zoom, like, this is not how the rest of the room looks, right?
I love that.
So there was this moment, like a couple of months into lockdown, where Zoom calls went from like, this is my background, to like, yeah, I'm wearing slippers. Like, right. I'm not wearing, I have a friend who works in business, and she was like, yeah, like in March and April, we were still taking showers and getting dressed to get onto business calls. And she's like, by June, it was like top up. By like August, it was like, I'm not wearing my bra anymore, right? Like, it's real world. And then like you talk about that and people are like, oh my God, me too. And slowly over time we realize like we're not living isolated experiences. We're living our experience, and there's differences, but like we're more alike than we are different.
I love that. And I think something about that being a part of our reality allows us to have a deeper connection, because it is that whole thing about, hey, I don't even have on any shoes or socks, or, I'm wearing shorts, or, it's like, Zoom from the top, so having those type of feelings or discussions allow people to connect even more deeper, because it's like, man, you too. And then you understand with so much clarity that it isn't about us and what we're doing. That really helps you drop a lot of the ego and say, the message that I'm sharing is so much more important than, this. And I tell people, today when I go to the store, it's like, yeah, how was your Christmas? You do all this stressing out for 5 minutes and it's over, right? And so that's what we do a lot of times. It's like, you're all into this video that lasts 5 minutes, and, it's about the message that really is going to have the impact and going to inspire people to take action. So knowing that from the beginning is, how do you make that more impactful? And it's about authenticity.
Yeah, I love that. And I really do think that for most of us, when we think about what was missing before, it comes back to that authenticity. We knew something was off. We knew we weren't the person we wanted to be, but we didn't know why, right? And it was like, oh, right, because I'm not showing up as myself. Like, I'm not the person who puts on makeup and a business suit. But because of how social media was before, you were curating and editing your life because that's what you were supposed to do, right?
Right.
And even the moms, like when I think about like the people that I followed before in the parenting world, there was still this like, they looked like they had their shit together, right? Like they were still like, the mess looked like somebody had sat there and like, or made the mess look right,
Right.
It was like there was something, or they had like the best lighting for the mess to take the picture of it. And again, it was like this authenticity when you're home alone, when you're not alone, but when you're home for an extended period of time, you get to that point where you're like, forget it. Like, it's not worth me spending 20 minutes cleaning up the room. I'm just going to turn my screen over here and you can like, or like, it's not worth me like going to put on nice shoes if you're not going to see them.
So true. And I've learned that over time. And I mean, I think that is some good points to bring up because these are the things that stop people from sharing a message that's really valuable because they're looking through that lens of, oh, I don't have the right light, or, my shirt, it should be this color, or, whatever the case is. And so many times, I've had those thoughts and it's like, but it's not about me. That's what I say to myself, because it's like, oh man, this will be a great lesson. But, I don't. I can't. So then it's like, you know what? It's not about me. And then it's like, just, camera on, let's do this. Even once that I cringe because it's like, man, I had one of them, my hair was out of place or something. I don't know. But it's like, are you going to erase this content over a hair, Right. And I had to ask myself those questions. And so it's like, no, we're just going to roll with it. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's those videos that get the most response when it is not scripted or you do notice more flaws, but the content is very authentic and impactful to other people.
Yeah. And I remember that video that you're talking about where you connected, like I was in my car that I had shown up early to pick up my kid, which never happens. And then I was like, I have something to say. Why don't I just turn on my phone and say it? And I can't even count how many people I had seen do that before where I was like, oh, I can't do that. Right? Like, that's not like, no, I have to it has to be perfect. It has to be not authentic, right? Like
right.
Me in the car going, here's a thought I want to share while I'm waiting for my kid and, to pick him up. And I'm not like, I haven't thought this out. I just had this thought and was like, I'm going to share this. Right. That was the one that was really impactful. And how many people are we missing?
Right.
And because we censor ourselves because we're wearing our pajamas and can't give the message, or it doesn't sound like I have to script it before I write it, or
right.
And so, yeah, I do feel like hopeful about the future when I think about how this shift is happening and it's going to create these ripple effects. And it'll create ripple effects for us, but it will also, and kind of more, what fills my heart more is knowing this will create ripple effects for our children. Because I think prior to all of this, there was so much fear around controlling our children, there's too much screen time and they have and school and all, and it was just like, we were putting so much pressure on our children. We were role modeling pressure and stress, right?
Right.
And that was putting a ton of pressure on them. And then they were going online and they were getting harassed and they were doing this and that and all this stuff. And we were like, oh my gosh. And now it's like, oh yeah, we are starting to be authentic. We are sharing stories. We're talking to our children more. We're learning more about their lives because they can't hide what's happening because they're sitting right next to me and can't go anywhere. And so I really have so much hope because they have that extra 20 to 30 years on us, like where like 20 to 30 years from now, they're not going to be questioning their authenticity. They're just going to show up authentic.
Right. I think that, yeah, and just being able to explore who they are. That element of everyone being at home, having that foundation to know who you are as a person, what works for you, what are your likes and dislikes. And yeah, we have the situation where, we have to be in school, we have to get education, but the element of being able to be home and have that time of our parents modeling what they desire in terms of values and seeing that every day in a more informal and formal setting, because it gets to be, whatever you see repetitively just automatically just becomes a part of your reality. And so, yeah, we would see family dynamics, but what is it? Sunday dinner that, everybody would eat together because everybody's schedules. But when you're seeing that 6 days out of a week instead of just one day, I mean, that has an impact. You long for those memories. You're creating more memories every time you're together.
I love that. And one of the things that really came to me kind of in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I would even say last month, is this sort of concept of, and actually it originally came from social media. So it's another example of how like seeing things, and connecting with like-minded people, but it's exactly what you're saying. Like we've been talking for years, I think a lot of us in the coaching world and in the parenting world about wanting to be more mindful. And it really started with like, oh, I'm worried about my children. I want them to be more mindful. So I need to go practice yoga and calm myself down. But then as soon as you walk in the house, you're stressed because the chaos is going on. And then, it's like, so you're trying to be mindful. You want your kids to be mindful, but you're not you're not learning them. You're not operating in that same realm. Right. So what came to me was sort of this cycle. Like I'm mindful and I am role modeling that for my children. They are mindful and present-minded because children tend to be, and I'm observing them now. And so I'm actually learning from them and seeing how they show up in the world with that sort of innate mindfulness. And so instead of having to go out, like again, it sort of cycles back to me watching my 4-year-old doing yoga and saying he's having fun and I'm stressing about it. Why don't I just have fun with him doing yoga? It's that's coming back to me in that sort of family framework, right? Like I can learn from my children just as much as I can teach my children. And that's what makes the memories. Because if I sit there on the top of the hierarchy, like being the teacher, the parent, the, disciplinarian, all of that stuff, that's not giving the children, that's not empowering them. It's not making them independent. It's not. And so what are they going to learn from that they're going to take forward? This, like being able to see them as humans, as partners, like partnering with my children instead of just like this hierarchical parenting. It allows us to create more of those memories, and how much more ease and joy, because you're not fighting with your child. Right? You're like,
so true.
You're like, oh, now it's your turn to be the chef. Like, what do you want to cook for dinner today? I'm tired.
Exactly.
Right? Like, oh yeah. And when I think back on 2020, to your point, like it does sort of feel like 5 to 7 years of work for them, right? It's like the year where time stood still and it sped by.
Yeah.
Like it felt like we were in this time warp. When I think back on it, again, like all of what I've experienced this year, it's like the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And yet I still have hope going into 2021.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I feel like that's really what life's about, because each day you can point to highs and lows, but you know there's going to be a tomorrow. So we can look back on 2020 and be like, oh yeah, like crazy roller coaster that I would never want to go on again. And I'm still going to take a step forward into 2021 with, with hope. Isn't that really, as parents, what we want our children to, is that the value and the message we want our children to have? Like, we have children so that they carry on this legacy of like the future. And this was the year that was like, everything broke loose and it could have completely gone off the rails. And yet we're still taking a step forward. It's an amazing message to show our children. And it was funny because my husband and I have, all these 90s shows, like shows that we watched as children, have now come back like on Netflix and Amazon, right? Like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and then reboots of shows like She-Ra and so we actually spent this year kind of reliving our childhood, right? In some ways, and getting to share that with our children.
Yeah.
So before we would talk about like the rotary phone, but now they get to see it on TV.
Exactly.
So it's like, there's also this like, them getting to learn about us and us getting to learn about them and being able to carry that forward. And that's where these memories are going to come from. Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. And, just making those connections. I mean, even just the different conversation that we have with our kids, before, I just remember it was a lot of superficial, how was your day? What did you do today? Monday through Friday, same type of conversation. Now it is just something totally different. It's more value driven, what type of friends, I've had some deep conversations with some of my teenage girls about, people's character, knowing the signs of what someone is about based on not what they're telling you, but what their actions are actually showing. So really having those more meaningful conversations, I think, is also key. So
and that's what you're going to remember, right? Like at the end of the day, we always are nostalgic when we look back on the future, like from the future. So like, right? Like, and I know there's a lot of pain and suffering this year too. So it's not to undo that or to belittle it. And knowing that there will be a time where we will look back and think fondly about the time and memories that we created this year. And I love that, because how amazing is it going to be for your girls, your teenagers, to take those conversations into their 20s. Like, we didn't have those conversations when we were in our teen years. And we had to figure a lot of that stuff out on our own. And we won't have to say to our kids, like, trust me, I know, because like I went through this. So, having those conversations are an experience for our children that is going to save them a lot of heartache. Or at least is going to plant seeds
in
them that is easier to implant when they're teenagers than when they're 20 and 30 and,
So true. I love that. Yeah. Some great points. So this has just been great conversation.
I know.
I could go on for hours.
Finish 2020 with you, Michelle.
This is nice. I should have had a little toast so we could be toasting in New Year. I didn't even think about it.
I know. I don't know if it came across, but like our neighbors are lighting fireworks.
Oh, I didn't hear.
I was like, oh, that's really loud. I hope they can't hear that. I didn't hear. Celebratory.
Yes. Now, so what is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
So I have a website, marisaraymond.com. And I have my 5 ways to play more with yoga for your followers and listeners, which I'll share the link as well. And I have a great new offer coming out for parents. It's a small group program, a collective, where we are going to meet weekly and talk about parenting tools. So how you can calm the chaos with positive discipline-based tools, but also mellow the mind. So self-care, and I call them family care tools, really mindfulness tools that you can implement no matter what age, and we'll share how you can use them yourself, how you can share them with your family. So I'm really excited about this because it combines yoga and parenting and a little bit of science as well. And so I will share that link with you as well if people are interested in the parent coaching. But having more fun on your mat and enjoying times with your kids and getting to play and have fun and not like walk around like there's a 20-pound weight on our shoulders all the time, or 200-pound weight for many of us.
Yes.
I feel like that is the take-home message of 2020. And yeah, just hope for the future.
Yeah, I love that. And peace begins with me, right?
And peace begins with me, always.
I love that. So just want to thank you again for coming. And, what is it that you aspire to accomplish in 2021?
Oh my gosh, it's such a great question. I always wait until 2021. Okay. But it's funny because I really think because of 2020, what I aspire to going into 2021, like I do feel like 2020 for me was about planting seeds because that was all we could do. So I am aspiring to continue to nurture those seeds. And a lot of those seeds are about healing my own stuff. But also sharing that message of, the seeds that we're planting today form the roots and the branches of our future. So 2021 for me is about nurturing those seeds.
I love that. That's good. I love that. Awesome. Well, I encourage you guys, as you heard it here, such great wisdom and insight about, it's not that we have all the answers, but we're connecting with people that resonate with us. They share our values when it comes to dealing with some of life's chaos that actually is a part of all of our lives. So we just really want to thank you, Marisa, for coming on and sharing those words of wisdom. And I encourage everybody to reach out to you to be able to talk about yoga and ways that we can connect our everyday lives in ways with our children that makes it more impactful and allows us to create great memories. So thanks again for coming on. And we definitely want to wish you a happy new year way in France. Wish we could be there to visit, right?
Yes. 2021.
Yes. I would love to just have a passport that allows me to go everywhere, but I don't even know how the travel laws are going to be. So that's crazy. But yeah.
Well, this meant so much to me. Thank you for closing out 2020 with me.
Yes. This is just awesome. Absolutely. So we will definitely have you back on in 2021 so you could share some more insight.
And I want to say hi to Faith because I've been thinking about her since she fell asleep.
Yes,
so I know we have a lot of them, but hi to Faith.
I will, yeah, because she is somewhere on her iPad. She got an iPad for her birthday in November. So yeah, she's somewhere on that. Look, it's amazing how during time when they are on vacation, they're not around me at all because it's like during the week when they're in school, they don't really get a chance to get on digital platforms except for the weekends. So when I'm not around outside of school time, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing, Mom?" And they're all around me. But when they're on vacation and they can just do their own thing, they're like, "Let me go find somewhere to hide so she doesn't, get on me. How long have you been on that thing? You need to do something else. Go clean your room,
Totally. Totally. And you complain, and also it's like, oh, it's kind of quiet around here. That's kind
Right. Right. Yes. So I look at it as time. It's like, hey, when they're quiet, I'm trying to get a lot of work done. Right.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Work and
So,
rest and clearing that energy.
yes. So true.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks so much. And you guys
Thank
have a wonderful
you.
Happy New Year. Tell your son happy birthday from us.
I will. I will. He'll be really happy. He's excited.
Yeah.
13.
I know that is exciting. We had one turn 13 last year. So he's going to be 14 in February. So
Crazy. Like you said, it happens fast.
it
So
goes by blink of an eye. Yeah.
yeah.
So true. Well, you enjoy yourself, and we will talk again in the near future. We
Can't
want
wait.
to thank you guys again for watching with us. Happy New Year to everybody. And I will see you guys next year on another episode. So thanks again. Bye for now.